Welcome back to another video. In today's video we're looking at the Renault Clio. When we asked Renault if we could test the Clio, we actually thought about the new Clio, which is coming out later this year. So nonetheless, we're still going to test this Clio just so we can get a good comparison once we get our hands on the newer one, which is going to come out obviously later this year. The car that we have right here, beep beep, is going to start at 18,000 euros. However, we have the Techno variant, so that's going to start at 26,400 euros due to the fact that we also have the highest motor in here, which is the full hybrid 145. 145 stands for most likely the horsepower, however, only has 140, so a little bit confusing why they said 145, because on the internet it also says 143, 140, something like that. Let's start off with the design of the car. Obviously, we do have the front, which is pre-facelift, obviously, because the facelift is coming out this year. We still have the little bit older Renault logo in here with a very small chrome grille, which comes with the Techno variant. And we also have a very far down license plate with some intakes down here, which are all real. In general, looks fairly decent. We also have the LED pure vision lights in here with this like thing on the side. This is for your turning lights. So every time you turn, these portray like kind of a, I don't know, how do you say that, like a fence thing, which looks pretty interesting. I'll put a picture on screen right now so you can see, but in general, just the front, there's really not much you can say about it. Looks fairly decent, but it doesn't look any sporty thing like that. The lights look a little bit. Let's take a look at the side, where first of all we can see that we do have intake right down here, just so we can get the air flowing past the wheels, which is a pretty cool touch. Some cars have that as a fake thing, but the Renault Clio has it as a real one. We also on here have 16-inch wheels, which are light metal wheels, and they're called Riala. They look pretty good, but 16-inch wheels, obviously not the biggest one, but they are pretty comfortable. We do also have disc brakes in the back and also in the front, back. We do also have keyless go, and we have these chrome touches you can hear right there. We do have keyless go and automatically foldable side mirrors. And if you go a little bit away, you can hear. I'm not a big fan of that sound. I haven't actually found a setting where you can turn it off, but every time it's like beep beep. I don't know about that. That was a perfect portrayal of that sound, by the way. We also have a chrome optic down on the side and also a fin shark tail on the top, which comes with the Techno variant. Also, we do have this handle up here. That's how you open the rear doors, which might be a little bit confusing for people or for friends. They're like, okay, where's the handle? And then they have to find it up here, so you might have to step out every single time. Also, fuel tank in here. Pretty cool value. We got 39 liters, not 40, we got 39. Let's take a look at the back, where we can see we have the E-Tech hybrid version, obviously, with those two electric motors. The electric variant, you can find that in the Arcana, and basically any other Renault model that has the full hybrid system, or also the Dacia. On here we have a fairly small rear window with a little bit of a lip on the top. We also have our rear view camera right in here, which is a pretty cool integration into the logo. Our lights look pretty nice, I like them. Those are LED as well. And then one thing I'm not a big fan of, however, is the handle for the rear, for the trunk. You have to put your finger below here, and the thing about that is that as soon as it rains, everything drips down here, and every time you press down here, your fingers are going to get fairly wet, so that's not the nicest thing. When you open this, you find that we haven't emptied the trunk. The trunk has a storage space of 246 liters. Jesus Christ, 246 liters if you don't flip over the front seats, the back seats, so it's not the biggest space. For instance, in a Polo, you get a little bit more. I think, what was it, 305 liters that you get in there? Yeah. Something around there, yeah. And you also don't have anything below. Well, you do have some. Jeez, okay. What the hell? There we go. You do have some space in here, but it's just for your spare tire change kit, and yeah, you don't really have anything where you can put something in there. But if you flip over the back seats, you get a storage space up to 1,096. So once you fold them over, like I said, 1,096, and you have a fairly big lip in there and a very, very big lip in here, which is not very nice. This lip is insanely big, so if you have any heavier load and you want to put it out, it's going to be a toll on your back. So trunk space not the biggest, but it's also a fairly small car. However, in a Polo, for instance, you get a little bit more, and the Polo is only 2 centimeters longer. The front of the Renault Clio kind of looks fairly interesting because we have obviously the Techno package, and with the Techno package you always get this white light gray thing, which is interesting color in here with the orange. I'm not the biggest fan of it, I gotta say. You also only have one light of ambient lighting here, which doesn't look bad at night, but it's only one, so it's a little bit interesting. You also have a very high center console, so it's actually fairly easy. If you have a manual gearbox, it's going to be fairly easy to change the gears because it's just in a very nice handling position. You also have inductive loading in here and your two USB cables or ports, as well as an aux and a 12 volt in here. You also, with the Techno package, get automatic climate control and a little bit bigger infotainment display, which is the same as in the Arcana that we had previously, which is a good infotainment display. There's really not much you can say about that. The seats in here are fairly nice. They are leather seats, so on the side, in the middle, they are like this fabric thing. They are fairly comfortable. The headrest, however, is fairly hard. You don't have much comforting in here, so if you're a person that always leans against the headrest, it's not going to be that nice. Headroom in here is fairly decent. Obviously, you can adjust the seating level from the front seats as well. We also have electric parking brake in here and a little bit more storage space in the middle, as well as a very, very small center armrest where you can store basically nothing in there apart from nothing. We also have a glove box, which is fairly small, and automatic climate control, like I said. The steering wheel, you also get a leather steering wheel if you have the Techno package, which is the same as in any other Renault or even Dacia when it comes to the buttons and stuff like that. You also get a digital cockpit, which does look pretty good, gives you all the basic information, and you actually get a fairly good amount of safety features, which we're going to take a look at a little bit later. You also, with the winter package, get heated seats as well as heated steering wheel. And some more, well, the leather package, you get that as well. You don't really have that much space in the back. If you look at the seating position, the seat is adjusted to me, so around 1.80 m. If you're over that height in the front and you're the same height as me in the back, you're not going to have that much leg room. You can see knee room is really not that much. You do have a fairly good headroom for a small car. It's actually fairly decent. And one thing, if you also take the camera up here, we have a pretty cool roof. I do like this, but one thing where they scammed you a little bit is that they do have the in-carving for the handles, but they don't actually have them in here. You can see that up here. You also have it on the driver's side, so it's probably just the one thing that they made in masses, and then they didn't put that in there. Maybe for other models they did. I don't know, but it should only be for the Clio. You also have a fairly good amount of footroom. So you do have a little bit of space in here. So over a long journey, for me it would be okay, but for really long journeys, definitely need to take a couple of breaks. You also have a fairly small center seat, which is also elevated a little bit. So if you're in the middle, you're not going to have a very pleasant journey. So 3 people in here is not going to be that nice. You do have fairly good ISIS fixed points, just like any other Renault. So it's easy to get those in there. The seats are also very comfortable. Well, not very comfortable, but they are fairly comfortable. And you also have adjustable seats, headrests in the back. Why are you laughing? We don't have a center console where you can put anything through. So you can't flip this over. You have a 2x1 configuration here, so you can't really have a center load in here. Also on the side, just like in the Dacia Jogger, we do have this on the side, so you can't really put your hand on there. It's going to flop around. And the other thing is that you think that these are different materials, but these are all the exact same. I don't know why they put this thing in here, because it doesn't actually look that nice, and you would expect a little bit of leather there or something like that, but it's the exact same. But that's it for the back. Oh, actually no, one thing, you don't also have a climate or any USB-C or any other ports in here where you can put anything in there, so that's basically it. But you do have a little bit of storage space in here, but these are really tiny as well. So the engine that we have in here is the 1.6 liter 4-cylinder engine in combination of that 2 electric motor. Obviously the same as in the Arcana and the Austral, which is just the technology that Renault uses, and also Dacia, where we have the 20 horsepower motor and also the 49 horsepower motor. So in combination you have 140, 130, 43, 145. Nobody knows how much you actually have, but that's the amount of horsepower you're going to get. Newton meters is 205, I think, right? Yeah. 205 Newton meters. Yeah, I mean 1.6 liters, that engine does actually do a fairly good job. And with the electric motor, I'm just not the biggest fan of the combination of the full hybrid, because the full hybrid just has that problem, just like in any other full hybrid that Renault and Dacia make. Every time the engine is below that 50% mark, it's just going to kick in the motor at a very high percentage, so a very high higher RPM, and that leads to a very high fuel consumption for a very short amount of time. And then basically as soon as the battery is over 50% again, it's just gonna use its electric motor. It does work, but in some sense it just kicks up the fuel consumption a lot, and I'm not the biggest fan of that. However, we can see on the digital cockpit here that we do have a couple of different options. Also changes if you go into the different modes, so you get a different animation, and you can also change the views on here on the left and the right side. And as we can see, we have a fuel consumption of 5.7 liters. Claimed is around a combined WLTP of between 4 and 3.6 liters. I don't personally think you can get that down all the way to that. If you go in eco mode and drive fairly friendly, you're probably going to get around the mark of, I'd say, mid 4 liters or low 5, like 5.15 or 4.9. That's probably what you're going to reach, but that WLTP claimed range, you're probably not going to reach that. However, the fuel consumption is fairly good, 5.7 liters, you definitely can't complain about that. So claimed is 9.3. We're obviously going to put it into the sports mode just so we can get the best start of it, obviously. And we can't turn off traction control. I haven't found an option for it, so we're just going to try it and see how fast we can go. Full down and then basically just kick it. Whoa. .47. We did have a slope of 0%, so that was basically the best estimate that we can get. The shifts, they're not the greatest. The shifts feel sometimes like they're lacking a little bit, and they just take a little bit while to actually kick in, like not like a full automatic. And it does have it's obviously because of the electric motor, it does have a punch at the start, but then later on it just kind of narrows it out. We'd also obviously have the infotainment system, which is the same as in the Arcana, like I said, and it does do its job, so you can go into navigation. Navigation is fairly fluid. You also see the prices of the gas around, so the fuel prices, which is a pretty cool touch, and it just does the gist. You also have Apple CarPlay via cable and Android Auto. You don't have that wireless. You also have quite amount of safety features in here. For instance, we have blind spot mirroring, which is very nice. Blind spot mirroring? Blind spot assistance, there we go. Lane assist, we have lane centralization assistance, if that's the correct term for it. We also have adaptive cruise control, we have adaptive speed limiter, we also have cruise control, so adaptive cruise control and stuff like that. So you can basically drive the car autonomous if you want that. It does actually work fairly good, so the lane centralization and the lane keeping assistant, even if you're going over a road that doesn't have the best lane marking, it's still gonna work. We have done it in, for instance, a construction site, so you can drive around there with 3 markings, and it's just gonna keep you in between those 2 ones where you're supposed to be between. You also have a fairly decent surrounding view. The rear window is, from the outside, a little bit small, but once you're on the inside, you can see everything that you need. Out the back, as you can see right there, and otherwise you don't have big pillars in here, so you do have a fairly decent surrounding view. One thing that's also pretty cool is that the sound system here, I think because the car is so small, the sound system actually sounds fairly decent, even though it's not an extra cost or anything like that. Sound system doesn't sound bad. If you're driving in the city, you can definitely feel that the suspension actually has a fairly good feel to it. It is fairly smooth, it doesn't feel hard or anything like that. And also the steering feel is fairly well, it's kind of it's not heavy, but it's like a perfect mix between heavy and light, so it's very comfortable to drive with it because it's just an easy to drive, and also with the leather steering it feels fairly good. And I like steering. It definitely feels better than, for instance, I've driven a couple of Polos, and they just feel, the steering in there just feels a little bit empty, and I think in this just feels a little bit more direct and just smooth, and it just feels good. Sound in here it's fairly decently isolated. We did drive 160 on the Autobahn, top speed is 180. We weren't able to reach that due to some traffic issues, but it is fairly well isolated. You don't have too much wind noise or tire noise, so yeah, and it's pretty comfortable in here with the seats. We do have, if we go into the sport mode again, we can look at a little bit of the cornering of the vehicle, because you can definitely notice that it's not supposed to be that sporty. You can definitely drive around these corners a little bit fast, definitely drive over that scooter driver there, but these corners are not quick enough for me to... But you can hear, I don't know if you hear that well, but you do have tires screeching at a fairly low speed, but it does definitely go around corners at a decent speed. If we go in here, maybe we can hear a little bit more. So what's my final verdict on the Renault Clio? Well, it's in a segment where you also get something like the Volkswagen Polo, but the Renault also offers the hybrid version, which the Polo doesn't do. So it really is up to you if you are more interested in the design and the style of the Polo or the Renault Clio. Obviously, you could get this one fairly cheap nowadays because it is a little bit older. So if you are interested in the newer version, we're obviously going to do a newer version video of this one once the facelift is out and we can actually test it for you. So if you haven't already, make sure to like and subscribe to stay updated, and we'll see you next time. Have a good one. Bye-bye.